In this video, you and I are going to go over the basics of Burpsuite. Hi, I'm Kyser Clark, a cybersecurity professional, more specifically a penetration tester. I've been working in the field for over 6 years full-time now, and I have 12 certifications and a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity. Before we get started with the video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe for more hacking and cybersecurity content. So what is Burpsuite? Burpsuite is a web proxy, and if you're unfamiliar with what a proxy is, think man in the middle or a middleman between a client and a server. So let's say we have a client with a web browser who goes to a website and sends information to a server. And the server would take that request that the client sent over here and send back information depending on what the client sent. And Burpsuite is, or a web proxy, would sit in the middle between the client and the server, and since it's in the middle, we can actually take all the requests that we're sending from our browser and capture them and then modify them in some way, and it gives us total control with what we're sending exactly to the server, because we really don't get that much control of the requests that we send to a server with our web browser. The way the web browser is set up typically is designed to pretty much limit your capacity in some way. And Burpsuite is pretty much the Swiss Army knife of web application assessments and web application tests, bug bounty hunters, and it's the industry standard for testing web applications in the modern day. This demo is for educational purposes only. Ethical hacking is legal and differs from illegal hacking. Always ensure you have legal permission before performing what you see in this demo. Alright, so I'm not going to bore you with theory in this video, so we're going to jump straight into it by launching Burp. So I have it saved on my taskbar here. And then once you load up Burp, you can, if you have the professional version, you'll be able to save your project, but since this is the community edition, the free version, the project can only exist in memory, so go ahead and click next. And then I almost always use Burp defaults, but you do have an option to load a configuration file. But just to start out, use the defaults. And then hit start Burp, and then it will start a project. And then once you get here, this is the main screen of Burpsuite. It can be a little intimidating at first, but I assure you it's actually not as complicated as it looks. Really, the only tabs that I'm using day to day is target, proxy, intruder, repeater, and sometimes decoder. And then these other tabs are very niche and they are only clicked by me anyways, very rarely. So in this video we're going to focus mostly on proxy, intruder, and repeater, because in my opinion these three are the bread and butter of what Burpsuite actually is. Okay, let's quickly highlight the target tab. So in target, we can see that the sitemap is empty. So as you are using Burpsuite and you are browsing a website, it will build a sitemap, which is incredibly useful, especially if the website that you're on is a little bit bigger, and it also will catch things that you don't see all the time. Like it will show you some of the endpoints that only exist in the background and you don't get to see on your screen. So it is nice to have the sitemap, and it is nice to refer to the sitemap as you're doing a web application test. Issue definitions, this really isn't a tool. This is just pretty much information and a description of different types of vulnerabilities. We're not going to go into any of this, but it is pretty useful to like see, what SQL injection is and how to remediate it. This isn't my first stop to like get a definition of like, for example, SQL injection, and it wouldn't be my first stop to like learn how to remediate SQL injection, but it is a nice tool to have, especially since it's offline and you can just quickly reference it if you need to. And then this is a super important part of the target, is the scope settings. This is where you establish your scope. So if you are working on a pen test or web application assessment and there are certain things that you're not allowed to touch, you can pretty much exclude that from the scope. You can pretty much say do not touch this part of the web application. You can click add and you can add like the URL, and then you can include scope, so you can do a whitelist or a blacklist. You really can fine tune, what you want to touch on this test and what you don't want to touch on this test, and that's super important, especially if you're doing this professionally and not in a lab environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with a proxy. So with proxy, there's pretty much two ways you can use the Burp proxy. So I'm going to go over a common one real quick. This is Firefox normally, and I have Foxy Proxy set up, and it's super easy to install Foxy Proxy, and you can see I have Burpsuite and Zap. Zap is another web proxy that you can use, and it has pretty much the same features as Burpsuite, except it's free. So this Zap does give you extended capabilities if you're only using the free version, but if you have Burp Professional, I almost never use Zap, but they are two tools that are commonly used in web application assessments. And as you can see here, if I wanted to use Burpsuite, so if I click on Burp here, it's already configured to be on port 8080, which is the default port for Burpsuite, and Zap also runs on port 8080, but since they're the same, I have to make one of them different, so I made my Zap 8081. And once this is on, pretty much anything that I click here is going to go to my Burpsuite. So let's just go to the Kali Linux main website. So this is Kali.org, and you can see I'm clicking things, I'm going to different endpoints, and if I go back over to Burp, we can see HTTP history, and this is all of the requests that I just sent. It captured every single one of them, so you can see like if I click here, you can see here's the request that I sent, and this was the server's response. So this is the web page that loaded up on my screen. And this is super useful because it literally captures everything as you're working. And then you can also clear it. So if we right click clear history, you can do that as well. I'm not going to show you how to configure Foxy Proxy, but that is a common way to use Burpsuite. There are other videos that show you how to use to configure Foxy Proxy and use Burpsuite with Firefox. I actually prefer using Google Chrome, and because of that, I think it's a lot easier. Not only is it easier, but it's also my preference to use the built-in Burpsuite browser. So if you go to the Proxy tab and you hit Intercept, you can hit Open Browser. So if we hit this is a built-in, it's not Google Chrome, it's Chromium, which is an open source version of Google Chrome. And like I said, I prefer Google Chrome. If you prefer Firefox, then I would definitely, go the Firefox and Foxy Proxy route, but I like Google Chrome, and the built-in browser is automatically configured for you, and you don't have to do anything. So we can actually do like Kali.org. Well, I have to type it right. It don't really matter, I just want to show you an example. So as I'm clicking stuff here, we're going to get the same results in our HTTP history. So everything that I just clicked on, all these Google search results, we got the request here, and we have the response. All right, let's go ahead and clear this up. Clear history, yes. So another main feature of Burpsuite is intercepting requests. Remember I was saying that you can capture the request and modify it in some way and send it back to the server. Let me show you how to do that. So we'll go back to intercept, and you would turn intercept on. And what this is going to do is, as soon as I send a request, it's going to freeze. The server will never get the request because Burp is intercepting it. It's going to catch the request, and then we're going to be able to see the request that we just sent, and then we can modify it in some way. So let me show you an example of that. So let's say we're on Kali.org, and we click another web page. Instantly, you can see this is the request that we just sent. And what the intercept does is we can do a few different things. So you can come down here, and one thing you can do is you can just add your own data. You can add different parameters, and really the sky's the limit to what you can do in your request. It really depends on what the server accepts, and that's what you're basically testing for. You're basically seeing, hey, does this server will it take additional data? And you can there's so many different things you can try with capturing a request and sending it back to the server, because that's the whole point of a web application assessment. You're basically testing the server's response to different things. So you can do that, and you can just hit forward, and we're probably going to get an error because that was just a bunch of random data. So let's go back to our browser. Oh, it actually loaded up, so that's pretty nice. But you can hit forward, and that will forward the request. And if we go to, let's go to my website real quick. So kyserclerk.com. So we just intercepted the request. This is what we're sending, and sometimes some websites will have multiple stages in a request. So you'd forward it, and then the server sends something back, and you basically have to do this multiple times. Some websites require multiple forwards, depending on how complex the website is. And then if you want to forward the rest of everything, you're tired of clicking, let's say it's like, in this case, it's like a bunch, because my website's pretty complicated. You can turn intercept off, and then it would just forward everything. And if we go back to the tab, boom, we are on my website. So that's how forward works. You can also drop the request. So like if we do, if we turn intercept back on, and let's say we want it to go to my blog. So this is the request that we're sending, and we can actually just drop that request, and we can just drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it. We're not actually sending these, and it just goes to the next thing, goes to the next thing, goes to the next thing. And so that's the thing you can do as well if you don't want to send it. Let's go back to cali.org. Cali.org. And let's turn intercept back on, and let's go ahead and click on the blog. So here's the request. And remember how I was saying that you can come down here and you can add data, but not only can you add data, you can right click, and this is one of the staples of Burp. You can actually send this to repeater, and this will just send this to repeater. And repeater it works very similar to the proxy, except it's quick. So I can send this request, and boom, here's a response. And let's say I want to modify my data in some way, I can hit send, and boom, the next response. And let's say, I'm testing something else, and I want to add, more data or take data away, I can just send, and boom, there's the response. So that's the point of repeater, because if you're doing it with the proxy, you have to turn intercept on, then you have to forward it, and then you have to go back. It's a lot more hassle to do it this way. And repeater, these are manual requests because I'm mainly typing in this data, but it's faster. I can send the same thing, over and over too if I want to, which is why I call it repeater. Send. Whereas proxy, if I forward this, I don't have it no more. So that's where repeater really shines, and that's the purpose of repeater. Another cool thing about repeater is you can actually have multiple tabs going on. So if we hit plus, we can have multiple tabs going on. So let me show you what that might look like. Let's say I was trying to test, I don't know, the press pack on the Kali website. So intercept is still on. I can right click and I can send this to repeater. So go back to the repeater tab. We can see that here is what I was working with before, the /blog endpoint. But I also have on my third tab here, I can actually close out of 2 because there's nothing there. On this third tab, we can see post to items. So I have 2 different endpoints that I can test simultaneously. I can push send and maybe get a response. There we go, it took a second. It says I'm forbidden, so I'm not allowed to do that. So that was a response. And you're probably wondering at this point, what is a vulnerability that I can exploit using Burp? So I have that set up for you. I have a very simple example of cross-site scripting. So let's go ahead and turn intercept off and forward that, and we will close out our repeater tabs. And let's go to http://localhost index.php. So here's a very, and I mean very simple website that I created that accepts a value and basically shoots it back at you. So it only accepts numbers too, so I want to highlight the fact that I am typing on my keyboard. I don't know if you can hear the clicks. I don't think you can, but I'm typing on my keyboard right now, and it doesn't accept text. It only accepts numbers, this is where Burpsuite comes in handy, because a lot of fields in web applications, you're not able to modify them exactly how you want. So maybe you can't put symbols in them, or you can't put numbers in them, or whatever. A lot of times symbols, for good reason, are filtered out, because symbols, you can pretty much, you know, have code execution, and you can do some scripting with symbols. So a lot of developers, and for, like I said, for good reason, will limit symbols, but Burpsuite will allow you to add symbols, and I want to show you that now. So let me show you what it's supposed to do first. So let's go ahead and hit submit, and you can see I just type in a number, and it just tells me, you know, what it is, and that's all this web application is supposed to do. But what if we turn intercept on, and then we hit a number? Let's do a different number. Let's do 23, and we'll submit. So this is what we just intercepted. So as you can see here, we can see this is what we just put in, and we can actually modify this. So let's go ahead and send this to repeater, and we can now say, you know, test. Remember, it wouldn't let us do letters, but in Burp it will let us send letters. So we can hit send, and as you can see, our output here is input value test. So we can hit render here, and as you can see, it took that input. So repeater in Burpsuite is a way to get around input filtering on the front end. So developers, it is good practice to filter input on the back end, but it doesn't always happen that way, and that is why we test for these things. So that is one thing that we can send. We can also send symbols. So if we, you know, just do some symbols here and send this, and as you can see, it filtered out our exclamation points and our dollar symbol, because that's filtered out on the back end, but on the front end it didn't filter out the less than symbols. So another thing you can do is, like, if you manage to steal a cookie, this is why stealing cookies is kind of a big deal. You can take someone else's cookie and you can plug it in right here, and I can basically impersonate another user. Let's say I stole someone's cookie and it was this value, and I hit send. I can post data on the behalf of another user because I stole their session cookie. So that's another big thing with Burpsuite. Okay, so let's go ahead and type in another number here, and let's turn this back on and hit submit. So here's the number I just typed, and let's go ahead and see what happens if I do some cross-site scripting. So we'll paste this in. So this is a script, and it's going to do an alert, and it's going to go fetch the cookie of the user. So let's go ahead and forward this, and as you can see here, we got our alert here, and we have it gave us the cookies. So this web application, this field in particular, is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, as you can see here. I'm not expecting beginners to understand what cross-site scripting is completely, but just know that this is in fact a vulnerability, and that's what this web application is designed to let you practice, is to test cross-site scripting stuff. So we hit OK, and remember, you know, if I paste that in here, well, I guess you could type in E. I guess E is considered a number, but it won't let me do symbols and the rest of that payload. It has to be in the proxy or in the repeater. We can actually paste this here and send it, and there's no input value here because it's an alert. Alerts don't get rendered in Burpsuite, but what I could do is I could get the cookie by doing things that doesn't use the alert function. So that's a little more advanced than what this demo is supposed to be, but you can actually, send malicious payloads this way. So that's Proxy and Repeater. This is a super simple example. It definitely gets way more complicated than this, but the point is you can intercept requests and you can modify requests, and you can do it in a efficient and fast manner, and that is where the power of Burpsuite is. So now let's go ahead and do Intruder. So remember, Intruder is basically dictionary attacks. So this is good for, I would say the main thing I use Intruder for is login pages. There are other uses out there, but typically speaking, it's good for brute forcing logins on a web page. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. Alright, so for this next example, I'm going to use my good friend TryHackMe to help demonstrate this. So this is part of the Burpsuite Intruder room on TryHackMe. And I did not want to intercept that, so let's go ahead and turn that off. And we'll minimize this. And as you can see, we have a login page here. So like I said, we can do some brute force dictionary attacks here. So typically we would put in a username and a password and log in, and we end up using a password to brute force this with Intruder. Now I would say that Burp Intruder, especially on the free version, isn't my preferred way to brute force something like this. I would use Hydra. Hydra is way faster, because with Burp Intruder on the free version, on the community version of Burpsuite, they actually throttle your speeds. So because of that, Burp Intruder isn't always the best option. Honestly, rarely the best option. But if you have the professional version of Burp, or if you're using the Zap proxy, those don't get throttled. So the concept's the same. Just know that if you're using the community version of Burpsuite, your requests are going to get limited, and it is very slow to do a comprehensive attack with Burp Intruder. But for our purposes, this isn't going to take too long, so we can use the free version for this example. So let's go ahead and say my username is Kyser Clark and password. And it don't really matter, because we're just going to intercept this request. So this request isn't actually going to touch the server. So hit login, and you can see our request gets sent to the proxy. Right here is the username, and right here is the password. Also, another fun fact about Burp is, like, remember how I said you can add data. So let's say this is a create user function, and we could do something like this. So we can be like, and admin equals true, and we can become admin that way. So there's vulnerabilities that exist like that. So that is just another example of why you would want Burpsuite, because there's no way to like say, hey, admin's true on the home page. So really, the possibilities with Burp is truly endless, and that's why it's such a great tool. But with that being said, that's not the vulnerability we're trying to exploit here. We're going to use Intruder. So similar to Repeater, we can right click, and instead of sending to Repeater, we would send to Intruder. So you'll see a highlight here. Click it, and this is what it looks like when you first load up Intruder. There's different types of attacks: sniper, battering ram, pitchfork, cluster bomb. You can read the differences here. Sniper is basically you're testing one position. Pitchfork is you're using two different positions with two different payloads, which is what we're going to be using in this example. And what you would do is, so you gotta pick the parameters that you want to fuzz by highlighting them, and then coming over here to the right hand side and doing this add button. So add, and then you can see it highlights different color, and it puts this what is that, a section symbol? I think that's what it's called, a section symbol around the parameter that you're trying to test. So we would want to do the same thing with the passwords, because we also want to test that. And what we would do is we would click payloads, and so we would just do a simple list, but there's tons of options here. But for the most part, in most cases, simple list is the go-to. And then you can just hit load, and these are the files that TryHackman gave me. So to test the username field, we can do usernames.txt, which is a list of usernames. So we can see several usernames in this list. And then if we wanted to, for our second payload set, we would hit the down arrow key and hit 2, and then we would do the same thing and load, and we got passwords. And this is a password list of common passwords. Most password lists are a lot longer than this. If you're unfamiliar with dictionary attacks and password attacks, but this is just a simple example because, once again, Burp Intruder is incredibly slow on the free version of Burpsuite. So that's pretty much it. So to recap, we got positions, we have username, and this is what we're testing here, and then we have password, and this is what we're testing here, and then we can go to payloads, and we got for our first payload we have usernames, and then for our second payload we have passwords. You can also do payload processing, so you can like come down here and add a rule. So we can add a suffix, so we can add, if we wanted to add a 3 to every username, we could. You can encode everything if you wanted to, and sometimes you got to do this stuff. It depends on the web application, but at its most simple form, we don't need to do that. But it is nice to have this payload processing because you can add tons of different rules here. But we're not going to go over all of these. You can add hashes, so it's pretty cool and pretty powerful. But let's stick with the basics here, and we'll hit start attack. And then you can see here, this is what I was talking about. The community edition of Burpsuite contains a demo version of Burp Intruder. Some functionality is disabled and attacks are time throttled. So you can see here, it looks like it's going pretty fast, and it is going faster than what we could do manually. So this is definitely faster than manually typing all this in. So there's that, but this is still pretty slow. If we were using the paid version, it would have been done in a moment. And if we was using the Hydra, it would have been done in a moment. But for demonstration purposes, it's nice to see, it is faster than doing it manually, but it is still pretty slow. So we'll just wait for this to complete real quick, and then I'll show you what we are looking for. Okay, so you see here on the bottom it says finished, and you're probably wondering, if you're doing this, like what just happened? Like what do we even do? And I'll tell you what we did. So we found the username and password credentials to log into this login panel. But how do we know that? So here's our first payload. We can sort these by clicking on them and ascending or descending. We can also sort it by the request number. And so here's our username, payload 1, passwords, payload 2, status codes. These are pretty important because you can also filter by status. In this case, everything got a 302, which is a redirect. And it's not helping us because everything's a 302. So it doesn't seem like anything's different here. However, if we sort by length, we have one that's different. And when you have one that's different, that is always an interesting finding, because this produces a different result than everything else. And this is actually our username and password that we found. So we can, let's go back, let's turn intercept off, and we will let's go back to our Intruder tab. So M Rivera, and the password is let me in 1. So username m.rivera, and password is let me in 1. Don't want to say the password, but as you can see, we have successfully logged into this support home web app, and we can further more attacks from here depending on how the web application is set up. But Yeah, generally speaking, when you have admin access to a web application, that's a pretty big deal, and it's a pretty big finding. And there you have it. That is Burpsuite basics in a nutshell. This is how I'm using Burpsuite every single day. And now this isn't a comprehensive guide on how to exploit SQL injection and cross-site request forgery. That is a whole nother video, and that's a course in itself. This is just the Burpsuite basics. You did get to see cross-site scripting, a basic cross-site scripting vulnerability, but Burpsuite, as I said before, it is really just a tool that facilitates intercepting requests and then modifying them and sending them to a server. Now, what to put in those requests, that is where the challenging part lies. Knowing what to put in your request and knowing what to send to the server and what to look for in the server responses. There's whole courses dedicated to that that I just don't have time to put that all in one video, but definitely check out some web application assessment courses. Right now I'm going through the OffenSec web assessor course, and I've been loving it so far. It's been challenging, but that is one that I would recommend. There's also a course at TCM Security. TryHackMe has tons of web courses, and so does Hack the Box. So recommend checking those out if you want to learn, do a deep dive on this stuff. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned the basics, because that's really all what this video is about. If you're interested in learning more basics about another tool, check out my last video where I went over the basics of Nmap and how I use it on a daily basis to scan networks.